All right, welcome to Infinity Training. This is part 2 of our series on personality profiling. Today we will cover the analytical personality type. So I'm going to ask you guys keep you can keep your microphones on unless it gets loud or something in the background, but why do you think understanding why would we spend time on personality profiling if what we're trying to do is sell real estate?
Because you're talking to so many different personalities. You have to be that chameleon that can talk to any type of personality that you run into.
Yeah, I think that pretty much sums it up. I mean, it's you, and then there's the rest of the world, and you have a particular personality type, and other people, some of those people might be very similar to yours, and other people may be very different. So how can you become, the word chameleon sometimes has negative connotations. So the word you might want to write down is versatile, or some people say versatile. But versatility is being able to deal with different groups of people in different kind of ways so that you can help them get to their goals, right? So one thing that I didn't understand when I got in the business is that when I felt like I wasn't really relating to people that well, I just tried to double down on me, which in turn, for certain types of personalities, that was the worst thing you could do. It just becomes more repelling. You know, you want to be more like the people that you deal with. In essence, it's like we have our little castle, and that protects us, like our parents or something told us, don't talk to strangers and all this other stuff. And so we're very careful about who we let cross the moat and come into the castle. You sort of get that analogy?
Yes.
And when people are much different than us, sometimes that can put up red flags. Yet when we're more comfortable with them, a lot of times that comfort comes from similarities, in personality, and just familiarity. So that's sort of the versatility concept, or the chameleon concept, that we're talking about. So just in quick review, the first personality type that we chose, and I only chose that one because I'm doing them alphabetical so I don't lose the order, was amiable. All right, and an amiable person, what are some traits? What would you think the traits of amiable people would be? You don't know. So amiable people, they like relationships. Their whole MO is how they want you to feel good. They want you to be comfortable. They want to bond with you. Okay.
Are those also going to be the people that are more discouraged when they have objections?
Conflict is not welcome to most amiable people. They do not want to have conflict. So if you bring up things that are in conflict to their beliefs, there's usually pushback. They usually don't want to bring up things if they disagree to a certain degree. They don't want to bring those things up. So they may agree with you to avoid that conflict, and then you think everything is great, and then you never hear from them again.
Right.
Okay?
But they'll tell you to your face that it was, they won't cause a conflict to you personally. They just won't contact you.
Correct. Most again. Now remember, there's exceptions in all these things. No one is. Well, I'm sure somebody is perfectly in the category, but most people are. They have 1.5 feet in the category, and then they may have some other things. The most important thing to realize is that you have a personality type that is your predominant personality type, and you need to understand what that is, because as we go through these types, you'll see that there's certain attributes of each that could be repelling to the others. Okay? So for instance, if we're talking about amiable, if somebody's totally into relationships and feelings, what would be repelling to them? What kind of salesman would be repelling to them?
honest and straightforward, whether it hurts your feelings or not, or whether you like it or not.
Like being honest.
I think honest is maybe the wrong, brutally honest would be maybe what you'd want to say. They're not really into that. But how about like a slick, fast talking, let's just get right down to business and boom, 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 that kind of person. That is repelling. Say again.
Analytical?
Analytical, there's some things that would certainly, as we go through the analytical, we'll itemize the different attributes there, and we can sort of compare and contrast to that. The main thing when you're talking about amiable, and then we'll get off of that in the review, is you need to have time to bond. Okay. And some of the other ones you don't really, that's not as necessary, but amiable is really about the feelings and how you feel about each other when you're talking about amiable. All right. So let's go into the analytical. All right. So when you think about analytical, the word analysis is in there. And so the main thing that I would have you write down about analytical is they need data or data. I never really knew the correct pronunciation. I think it goes either way there. But they need supporting data to justify their decisions. Okay? So back to the amiable. Amiable, really it's about trust, and it's about a good vibe between people, where this is not that at all. This is about me analyzing information and data in order to make a decision. Understand? So that's the bottom line when it comes to analyticals. Let me see here. So I just wrote down a couple things that when I thought of analyticals, you think of that they're perceived as very logical people. So everything has to add up, right? They're perceived as sometimes cautious, because when you have to do a tremendous amount of analysis, is that like people make decisions off the cuff that are analytical?
No.
Analytical people don't make usually quick decisions, because there's a process, there's an analysis process that has to go on in order to make the decisions. I wrote down they look before they leap. Okay. You may know people, and you may yourself be the kind of person that leaps before you look. All right. So, but analytical person is always going to look before they leap. Their decisions are based on critical thinking. Their decisions are based on an examination of relevant data. They tend to be somewhat businesslike in their appearance and their mannerisms. Do you think they're big risk takers?
If the numbers are right.
Well, if the numbers are right, is there really a risk? It's
not really a risk, right? So
the pieces to the puzzle, if they're all there, they're willing to move forward. They're less likely to take risks because of just how they process things. They're going to make sure there's enough information and data there to move forward. And then I also wrote down planning is important. Again, they look before they leap. All right. So, and remember this too. None of these particular personality types are better than others. Okay. There's not one that's like superior. They all have merit, and then they all, I guess you could say, would have some kind of weaknesses. So some of the assets of analytical is, if you approach your problem solving based on facts and logic, if you do that, you're probably not going to make a whole lot of terrible mistakes if you have good information going into it. Would you agree with that? So their perceived caution can pay off down the line. They're good at following the rules because an analytical process is based on rules. They tend to be very thorough. Would you agree with that? Very thorough people. And then then they also, they once they get the hang of things, they can become very competent and very professional in what they're doing. What kind of, when you think about careers, this is one way to help you bird dog who you're dealing with. Okay, so if you think about analyticals, what kind of careers are they drawn to?
I would say attorneys or even medical professionals.
Okay. Perhaps.
Market trades.
Perhaps. Luis, what about you? What do you think?
Just people that deal with like a lot of researching.
Yeah.
Like a lot of professionals in that field.
So like what is a big research field? Or a numbers field. Who deals with numbers?
Like scientists.
Scientist, yep. How about accountant?
Accountant, yeah.
So is there any room for emotion, feelings when you're an accountant? I mean, you could go to the water cooler and tell a joke or something, but really when you're doing your job, I mean, an accounting deal, the data, it has to add up, right? Mm-hmm. Same with a scientist, when you're using, empirical data and whatever. So people that have those kind of jobs, engineers would be another one. Davina, you were saying some of the ideas like lawyer to a certain degree, but sometimes lawyers have to, especially like a trial lawyer, you've got to sort of be a showman and maybe a little bit more expressive than maybe somebody's a patent attorney. Right. If you're just like interpreting the law or something. So anyway, that's what you might find. So if you've got somebody who's an accountant, there are very few accountants that are not expressive. That are not analytical. Okay. There are very few. There's what the heck is the thing called actuary? You know what an actuary does? So actuary is part of the insurance world. So an actuary, like if you were going to buy life insurance, the actuaries are the people that determine the likelihood of your death. So they're just looking at data like, okay, well, if you're 32 and you're a smoker and you're male or what, then they're going to figure out, the whole deal and how much to charge you for life insurance. Actuary, anybody ever hear actuary? Guaranteed analytical. Okay. So that's a little bit about where you find those people. And then, what about people that are amiable? Let's go back to that. Where would you maybe find them?
Therapists.
Yeah, in the helping professions, nurses,
maybe child daycare.
Yeah, daycare.
Teachers.
Yeah, so people that like working with other people. Is an accounting position, is that really like a team-based thing for the most part? Probably. I'm so far away from that. There's no way I could even relate to that. So that's not my personality type, but I don't even know. I don't think it is. So analytical people like to sort of work individually. They like to come up with the whole process and the solutions on their own, where somebody who's amiable is more team-based, right? If we're working together, so saying things like, we're forming a team and we're working together, that appeals more to the amiable than it would the analytical. Okay. So here's back to the analytical, some of the maybe the liabilities of the analytical style. Because they're non-emotional and they tend not to want to worry about relationships, that can be sort of standoffish to some people and maybe trigger a defensive response from some people. And so why you need to know that is because if you're analytical, you need to know what's turning other people off, right? A lot of analytical people they're not the most social folks, so people can interpret that a little bit differently sometimes. Sometimes analyticals, I was talking to a buddy of mine who's a mortgage guy, and we were talking about one of the clients we had about 12 months ago. And we were like, I was telling him about what I was going to do. And this guy named Joe was so analytical that by the time he processed, like he would go, every house he'd look at, he'd make like a spreadsheet, and it would be like how much gas he would have to use to go to work, and then the utility costs, and, just beyond belief what he'd have. By the time he could get all that and process that, guess what happened to the house?
Gone.
Somebody else bought it. It wasn't there. So, we had to go through that process like 500 times for him to figure out that maybe the spreadsheet, maybe we need to shrink it down to just a couple categories. So they can get so bogged down in the details and the minutia of things that they never are able to act. And then sometimes they're reluctant to trust, because if somebody's not exactly like them, and then based on numbers, they might not trust. So what does an analytical person's, let's say that you're in their office, what does their work environment look like typically?
Probably very organized.
Yeah.
Okay. Here's what we found on that is it is organized, but it's organized to them. It may not look as organized to you. Now, sometimes it can. I'll give you an example. I went to an accountant's office not long ago, and we were talking, and I noticed there's stacks of files everywhere. And I'm thinking, God, this is sort of messy for a guy who's an accountant. And so we're like, well, yeah, we need that. What was the tax return from 1996, for Bob and Sally? What was that? And the guy goes to the left-hand corner, digs halfway through and pulls it out. He's like, here it is. So, it didn't look organized to me, but it's very organized to him. So their world is organized, but it may not appear that way to you. They've got their system and it works for them, and they're there. As far as, and what I'm trying to do here is let you sort of get an idea, because you need to be in the field. You need to be able to sort of get some hints and maybe pick up and say, hey, maybe this person is analytical, okay? Or maybe this person is amiable. What is an amiable person? What does their office look like? What does their home look like?
Probably lots of house plants and family pictures on the wall, and
Yes.
very intimate.
Yeah, very comforting, very comfortable furniture, plants, pets, pictures of family, just loving, caring, just good old down home stuff. When you go into somebody who's amiable, they want, can I fix you dinner? Can you need a drink? They're going to just try to make sure you're comfortable, where an analytical person is going to be, they might have, I'm not saying there's no art and there's no pictures, but if you see somebody that's got family pictures over the top, they're amiable. If you see somebody who is, a little bit more stark and less of that, then they're not amiable, and there's a good chance they might be on the analytical side, especially if it's an accountant or one of those other jobs that we've talked about. Okay. So here's some things that we want to do as far as when you go to a presentation and you're working with somebody who's analytical. Do you ever want to be late? I don't know if you ever want to be late anyway, but for analytical, what does late mean?
Unprofessional.
Bad, because it doesn't fit into it's just not, if we said 1 o'clock, then it needs to be either 1 o'clock or before. It's just not in sync with their program. How do you want to dress with somebody who's analytical?
To the T, professional.
I think professional and neat, but maybe not over the top. I think that they're not going to appreciate, everything being over the top, but I think they're going to expect neat and professional. How much bonding do you do when you go on a listing presentation or presentation with somebody who's analytical?
Probably not much.
Yeah. Versus the amiable?
Yeah.
The amiable, it's all about that.
Yeah.
I guess you could go over the top with the amiable too, but with the with somebody who's analytical, if you were referred to them by Bob, you might want to, oh, Bob, and talk a little bit about, but you need to get down to business, right? So I wrote minimize bond and get down to business. How about your presentation? You just want to sort of shoot, or do you want to have some notes and keep it pretty structured?
Structural.
Definitely structured. Definitely structured. Do you want to bring any supportive materials on this analytical appointment?
Absolutely.
How much?
You have to anticipate what they might ask. So the preparation and going into an analytical meeting as opposed to going into an amiable meeting, it's probably quite a bit more.
Correct. I mean, you want to be prepared for any meeting or appointment you go to, but with the analytical, you want to bring extra stuff. Some people, maybe they would just want to see a couple comparables from the last 6 months. Maybe you can, if you're going to go on the appointment with the analytical, you might want to bring, every single thing from the last 2 years. Again, more, in most cases, the more, the better. Even if they don't ask for it, it's nice to know that you were prepared and have it. And I think they'll value you and respect you more if you are 100% prepared with the data. Do you want to close quickly with the analytical? Do they make quick decisions? Why, Louise? Why don't they make quick decisions?
Well, like you were saying before, like they want support with all the information that they can have. So just a quick decision, probably it won't be a good idea. Like they want to take their time and make sure everything is going accordingly.
Right. That it all lines up, that it all makes sense. They need to process the data and make sense of it. So somebody who is a persistent closer is probably going to be misperceived by the analytical. Would you agree with that?
Mm-hmm.
I wrote here, as far as rate of speech, I don't think you want to be the fast talking, hey, ho, and you want to speak in a slower pace, and probably not without any emotion, but not in a, what do they call it, gesticulating. You don't want to be all over the place and in your presentation. The other thing you want to avoid is talking about things like dreams and feeling, like gut feelings. With somebody who's analytical, if I say, what, I really can't put it to pen and paper, but it just feels right to me. How do you think they perceive that? They're like, what the hell are you talking about?
Yeah.
Doesn't make any sense.
Other people can appreciate that, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So here's some things I wrote. When it comes to analyticals, don't be disorganized. Don't try to sell the dream and the feelings. Don't be giddy and conversational. Don't use your opinion as evidence. Don't close too hard or push deadlines. Don't be vague. And then I wrote, don't put too much weight on testimonials. Do you think amiable people, are testimonials good with amiable people?
Yeah.
Yeah, because if you made other people feel good and then they're going to value that. But it really all comes down to, does the data line up? Is there proof that you can see on paper? Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Okay. So any questions about, well, we can talk about analyticals or amiables. Any questions about those?
Well, my question is this: how quickly, and you've been in the business for some time now, how quickly in a meeting face-to-face with somebody are you able to place a personality profile?
Good question. So the time to start thinking about it is when you originally talk to them and sort of pre-qualify them for the appointment. So if I call somebody, I'm trying to pick up, I'm going to ask them what they do for a living. I'm just going to try to get some conversation out of them to try to get some clues as to what they might be. What sometimes complicates this is if you have like a couple, you might have one that is one of these things and one that is another. And that can sometimes be a very interesting dynamic. Yet it's important to know that. So again, one tip, Davina, on this is sometimes I can't tell what they are. So then I start thinking about what are they not? Like when you talk to somebody, you may be able to disqualify like analytical and amiable right off the bat. So then that leaves the other two, which are driver and expressive. So it's almost like a quadrant. I don't have, let me see if I can draw this to you. Where's my pen? Hold tight. A visual aid. No extra charge for this. All right, see that's like a axis, vertical and horizontal axis. All right. Up here is analytical. Down here is amiable. This is expressive, and this is what driver. And we'll learn about those in the next couple of weeks. But so there's certain similarities with people that are on this side of the vertical axis, and then there's, you know, and then on this side of the vertical axis, as there are some similarities with the driver and the analytical and the expressive and the amiable that are below the horizontal axis. So even if you don't get it perfect, you can sort of narrow it down, and then you just know to not make big, like, what's the biggest mistake? If you think somebody is analytical, or we haven't really talked about driver, but let's say analytical, what's the biggest mistake you can make with somebody who's analytical?
Show an expressive personality, since that is cross and down and away, as far away from their personality as possible.
Yeah, and it's what. Here's the other thing. I'll give a little tip. Crossing the axis on an angle, that's the worst. So right. Amiable and driver are opposites, and expressive and analytical opposite. So, and see, I didn't get that. Like I'm expressive, and so I would never get any success. I never have any success with amiable. I mean, with expressives, with analytical people, because they just hated me. Can you imagine that? So because my whole MO is based on, you know, energy and enthusiasm and feelings and, you know, and like fun and trust, and theirs is that's just all that kind of stuff is just
boring. Horrible. Yeah.
So imagine, you know, here I come, here I am, you know, I was 28 years old, I'm coming on in, and now I'm just going to pound them with that, and they're just so versatility here. So here's how you deal with that. So now if I know you're expressive and I'm going on an appointment with you, I've got to cognitively understand that that's the case. And so I'm going to have all sorts of, it's going to tear me up to bring all this BS with me, but I'm going to have all this crap, this data. And then I'm going to ask the people, I'm going to say, when I sit down, I know they're analytical. I say, hey, Mr. and Miss Analytical, I don't know if you're like me, but, you know, I just need to take copious notes when I'm in a meeting. Is it okay if I, you know, you're going to see me write down a ton of stuff. Is that okay with you? So what do you think? Do analytical people like notes?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
They love that. Guess what I do with the notes when I leave usually?
Throw it away.
Throw them away. Now, and again, I'm not lying. This isn't about lying. It's just about trying to build a relationship, because I'm still going to be a great agent for these people, right? I need to get into the circle, get into their inner circle, and get out, you know, and not cause alarm up front. And then we're gonna work very well together. So back to your question, yes, I can identify people fairly quickly.
What position in realty does an analytical personality fit? Obviously, agents, selling and buying agents may not be their niche or their fit, unless they're working with other very analytical people. But in the realty world, what other type of position would
There's successful real estate agents that come from every personality background. So it's not limited. And then there's, with so few exceptions, I mean, it's going to be hard for somebody who's expressive to really get excited about being in the accounting world or something. But I think in real estate, we've seen that people come from a variety of different backgrounds. We have a lot of amiable people in real estate because they're nurturing the clients and whatever else, and they really like that. The driver personality and the expressive personality and even the analytical personality are all present there. What personality types do you guys think you have? Starting with you, Luis.
I would say I'm amiable.
Okay.
Yeah. But I mean, like, I can be analytical also. So I would say, like, I could be like a mixture of both.
Okay.
Yeah.
Davina, what about you?
Not knowing what your spin on the other two, expressive and driven, is, just from kind of defeasing my own information and my own definition of it, I would say I'm expressive and a driver.
Okay. Well,
I like to make people happy. I like to make them very, very comfortable in my presence. But it doesn't.
It's interesting with you, when you came back yesterday with your book, with all your notes and your tabs, and you have, you would think maybe that could be a tendency of analytical. But
I see that as OCD, but
then the way your thoughts and your mind sort of goes of zoom, zoom, zoom like that, that's not typically a analytical trait. That tends to be more like the person that's like squirrel. That's usually like expressive. So let me ask you another question. So is your personality type best determined by what you think it is, or by what the rest of the world thinks it is?
I feel like it's the rest of the world, how they see me. They see me more clearly. I used to think I was a great speaker in front of groups until I was told later, you really stink at that. So it's really just how other people perceive you, and they have the best view from outside of the box.
I think you're right. I think when I was trained in this arena of personality profiling, I went to a 4-day thing out in California that covered this in a lot more detail. But we had to get 20 people that we knew to fill out a questionnaire about us. And I wondered why that was. Well, because they compiled that data, and then they asked us what we thought our personality was. And then we compared that with what 20 people that knew us thought it was. And the guy's point is, you're really not who you think you are. You're who they think you are. Because if people perceive you as a driver, then maybe you're really not, but that's how you act. So that's what you are. Okay. So, and it's so important to know that, because then you're trying to move, for instance, back to here, you're trying to move towards the middle. If you're analytical, you're never going to be expressive. You're just never going to be able to totally make that deal. But you can shed some of the analytical stuff and be more tolerant to these people, right? So every statement is not going to be based on some kind of math formula, when you're talking to them. Now, when you're talking to your people, then formula it up, or they can get off on that. So anyway, that's sort of what we're talking about. So I'm going to, when we're done, Luis, what's your last name?
Amaya, Amaya.
So what is your hometown email address? Are you Luis A?
It's L Amaya.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to send you guys this little test that is, and you can take it yourself, which is a good idea, but I'd also make some copies of it and give it to a couple people that you know, and let them give it back to you, and then sort of see if you are who you think you are, or you are somebody different. Get it? It's pretty heavy.
Yeah. I was thinking about doing that. Like, once you said you went to California to do that test, I was like, well, that's actually a good idea to figure out, you know, what people actually think about me.
Most everybody was different. Well, this was interesting because they introduced the different personality styles. So then people sort of they think, well, gee, I think it would be cool to be a driver. You know, that's what I want to be. And so, but most people were different. People perceive them as different than what they really, or they thought they were, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So anyway, well, I will, as soon as we're done, I'll scan that thing and then I'll send it to you and you can play with that. Any other questions
Great,
about
thank
it?
you.
I think I'm good.
If you're good, I'm good.
All right.
Thanks, guys, for being here. And we will catch you on something else. If you need anything, just give me a call.